Cole knew something was off the moment he stepped through the door. What he didn't expect was how calm he'd feel confronting the truth. His wife had betrayed him, but it wasn't the affair that broke him. It was the lies, the silence, the way she let their kids lose faith in her. And what Cole did next wasn't revenge. It was justice, with a twist no one saw coming. Cole had taken that bike ride not for the exercise, but to steel himself. The long route through the hills outside town gave him time. Time to let the truth settle, to rehearse what he wouldn't say, and to remind himself that anger wouldn't fix anything. He didn't ride fast. He didn't ride hard. He just needed to get his breathing under control before stepping into what used to be his home. When he turned the key and walked in, the silence met him like a wall. Not the usual quiet of an empty house, but something heavier. The kind that meant someone had been sitting in it too long, thinking about what they were too afraid to say. Madison was at the kitchen table, staring at nothing in particular. She didn't look up when he entered. She didn't need to. They both knew why she was sitting there. She waited for the sound of the helmet hitting the floor, the slow approach of his footsteps, as if the delay between movements might somehow delay the inevitable. When she finally looked at him, she didn't speak right away. Her lips parted, then closed again. Cole didn't help her out. He went to the fridge, poured a glass of water, took a sip, and leaned against the counter. She started with, "Cole, I need to tell you something." He nodded once. "It's about Travis, right?" Her expression cracked instantly. That name had taken all the air out of the room. She blinked, trying to process how he knew, what he knew, and how much. Cole didn't wait for her to find the words. "Everyone knows, Madison. I just wanted to see if you'd ever say it out loud." She fumbled through a half-prepared script. "I was going to. I just didn't know how." That's when he looked at her, not with anger, not with heartbreak, but with the kind of tiredness that settles in when you've been disappointed for too long. "You didn't know how? For 6 months?" She opened her mouth again, but he raised a hand, palm out. He wasn't interested in justifications. "You think I didn't notice when Jason stopped having dinner with us? When Emma started making excuses to stay over at her friends' houses every weekend? They knew, and they were just waiting for me to do something about it." Madison's voice dropped. "I know this hurts you. I'm not going to defend what I did, but I want to fix it. I still believe in us." He gave a short, sharp laugh. "You believe in us now?" She stood, tried to move toward him, but he stepped back. "No, stay there. Listen, this ended a long time ago. You just didn't notice because you were too busy deleting texts and making up stories." Madison looked like she wanted to argue, but she couldn't. Not convincingly. Not anymore. "I didn't want it to be like this," Cole said. "But it is. And no, it's not the routine, or stress, or some rough patch. You made choices. You had time to be honest. And you didn't." He walked out of the room for a moment, came back with a folder, and slid it across the table to her. Divorce papers. Dates filled in. His signature already there. She stared at it, stunned. "You've had these ready?" "For weeks," he said. "I was waiting to see if you'd tell the truth. Just once." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I messed up. I don't know how to move forward from here." "You'll figure it out," he said, alone. And then he left the room. The only sound left behind was the creak of his bike being hung back in the garage. Madison sat at the table, frozen, like someone watching a life they'd taken for granted dissolve in front of them. Outside, Cole stood in the driveway, breathing deeply, the weight of months pressing down on his shoulders. The tears didn't fall, but they were close, held back by the same restraint that had kept him quiet for so long. He wasn't numb. He was finished. The next morning, Madison tried to pretend. She moved through her routine like muscle memory, brewing coffee, setting out mugs, putting bread in the toaster. But there was no rhythm to it. She acted like habit might fix something. It didn't. Cole came into the kitchen without a word. He poured coffee, nodded once, and leaned against the counter, not even glancing at the table she had neatly arranged. Madison tried to smile. He didn't return it. "I ended things with Travis," she said, voice low, as if the volume would soften the damage. "I want to try to save this. Us." Cole didn't answer right away. He took a sip, let a long pause hang in the air, and then said, "No, you didn't." She blinked. What? You didn't end it. He did. She stepped back slightly, caught off guard. You only stopped because you were forced to, because Claire found out. She's the one who threatened him, with lawyers, with losing custody, with exposure. He didn't want to risk it, so he dropped you. Madison's lips moved, searching for a response, but she had nothing. You didn't come clean because of guilt. You didn't end it out of love for this family. You were dropped, and now you're scrambling to keep the scraps of what you lost. She sat down slowly, trying to find her breath. How do you know all that? Cole looked her in the eye. Because Claire told me. She messaged me the night she found out. Wanted to know if I had noticed anything strange between you and her husband. At first I didn't want to believe her, but she was calm, respectful, not dramatic, just real. So we started talking. Compared timelines, notes, and the more we talked, the more it all made sense. Madison stared at him, stunned. You talked to her? We've been talking for months, same therapist, same group rides, shared silence, shared anger, shared disappointments. She's the only person who understood what I was going through. While you were hiding messages, we were sitting in the same room trying to put our lives back together. Madison pressed her hands together, as if trying to stop them from trembling. So what? What are you two now? Together? Cole didn't flinch. No, we're not anything. We just survived the same wreckage, and we did it with honesty. She leaned forward, her voice starting to rise. It wasn't that simple. I felt invisible. You were always working, always tired. He cut her off. No, don't rewrite this. You weren't invisible. You just wanted something new, something exciting. You had a home, a partner, a family. You chose risk over reality, and now you want me to believe you did it because I wasn't paying enough attention? Madison stood again, but slower this time. I made a mistake. It wasn't a mistake, he said flatly. It was a series of decisions, repeated, deliberate choices, and now the damage isn't just between us. That was when Madison's voice finally cracked. The kids. Cole nodded once. Emma called last night, said she needed space. Jason told me to let him know when you were out of the house before he comes home. Tears welled up, but she didn't cry. Not yet. She just stood there, frozen by the realization that her son and daughter had stopped seeing her as a safe place. I never meant to hurt them, she whispered. You did, Cole said, and they're old enough to feel it. He grabbed his keys and left without another word. Madison stood alone in the kitchen, no longer pretending. She was starting to understand that what she'd broken couldn't be patched with apologies or clean tables. That night, she tried to reach the kids. She called Emma, straight to voicemail. Jason didn't answer his texts. She even recorded a video message, then deleted it before sending. Everything sounded hollow. Every word she used to rely on now felt like a lie. She cooked dinner, something she used to make when the kids were younger. No one showed up. She left plates out just in case. They stayed untouched. Later, Cole came in, grabbed leftovers without a word, and went upstairs. Madison sat alone at the table, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking clock, wondering when her life had become something she could no longer recognize. The next morning, while tidying up Jason's room, she found a letter on his desk, handwritten, like the ones he used to leave when he was in elementary school. Only this one wasn't sweet. It was cold, mature, final. He wrote that he felt ashamed, that watching his father hold the family together while she lied had changed how he saw her. He didn't want to speak to her, not out of anger, but out of disappointment. I need distance, he wrote. I need time to figure out how to not see you as a stranger. That's when the tears finally came, not out of self-pity, but because she finally understood that it wasn't just her marriage she destroyed, it was trust, and that takes more than words to fix. Cole came in a few hours later, found her staring blankly at the living room wall. I'll keep the papers moving, he said quietly. We'll keep things clean for the kids. She looked up, voice barely a whisper. I don't even know who I am anymore. You're the sum of your choices, he replied, and now you live with them, just like I do. He walked away. She stayed where she was, no longer trying to chase him. Days passed, but the air in the house didn't change. Madison tried to carry on, moving through routines like someone hoping a habit could reverse time. She cleaned, cooked, left sticky notes for the kids like she used to, but no one answered. The silence wasn't passive anymore. It was punishment. Cole barely spoke. When he did, it was about logistics, the lawyer's appointment, the updated financial statements, the arrangements for the kids. Everything else was off limits. One afternoon, Madison approached him in the living room while he was going through documents. "We need to talk," she said. "Not here. Somewhere neutral. A restaurant, maybe. Just us." He didn't even look up. "I'm not interested in pretending we're still something we're not, especially in public." She paused. The rejection was so calm it cut deeper than if he'd yelled. That night she ate dinner alone. Again. She stared at the other chairs, remembering laughter, fights over who got the last slice of pizza, Emma's stories from school, Jason's jokes. Now nothing. The next morning she found herself scrolling through her daughter's social media. Photos from a weekend hike. Cole and Emma smiling. Claire in the background, holding a thermos and talking to Jason. They looked normal, like a family, her family. She didn't see hate in their eyes. She saw peace. That same afternoon, Cole came home to find Madison waiting by the stairs. "Do the kids like being around her?" she asked. It wasn't a question about Claire. It was about her own absence. "They feel safe," he said. She hesitated, then asked, "Are you two together now?" He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was steady. "I'm not with anyone. But if I were, it wouldn't be for the reasons you think, not for comfort or to replace you. It would be because that connection was built on truth, not deception." Madison's shoulders dropped. "So I'm just erased." "No," he said. "You're not erased. You're remembered, but not the way you hoped." She turned and walked away, saying nothing. That night she cried without hiding it, not in secret, not behind a closed door, because hiding hadn't helped her before, and it wouldn't save her now. Later that week, Emma sent her a short text. "We're okay, just not ready." Jason didn't write at all. One evening, Madison found a small note taped to her bathroom mirror, a reply to one she'd left months ago. "Don't try to guilt us into forgetting." No signature. She knew it was Jason. That Sunday, she made their favorite lunch. She bought ingredients from scratch, spent hours preparing it, set the table for 4. No one came. She sat in silence, staring at full plates and empty seats. Cole finally walked in late in the afternoon. He glanced at the table, then at her. "You need to stop acting like this can be undone," he said. "This isn't about second chances. It's about accepting what's already gone." She nodded. For the first time, she didn't argue. He left shortly after without saying where he was going. She stood by the window for hours, wondering if he was with Claire. But the worst part wasn't the thought of him being with someone else. The worst part was realizing that wherever he was, it was better than being there with her. In the middle of the night, she heard movement in the kitchen. She went downstairs and found Cole quietly packing a small box. Kitchen utensils, some paperwork, a set of spare keys. Her voice was soft. "Are you leaving?" He didn't stop moving. "Not yet, just organizing things. I want it to be clean when I go." She watched him. "I understand regret now," she said. "I understand what I destroyed." He looked at her for a moment. "Regret doesn't undo damage, and it doesn't rebuild trust. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just exhausted." She stepped toward him, hand half raised as if to touch his arm. He stepped back, not abruptly, but enough to make it clear. "I waited for you to come home. I made plans. I believed excuses. I'm not that person anymore." Madison stood frozen. "Only I destroyed myself." He nodded. "That's the first honest thing you've said in a while." He picked up the box and went upstairs. She didn't follow. The next morning, she packed a suitcase. Not a dramatic escape, just enough clothes, documents, a photo of the kids. She walked slowly through the house. She paused in Jason's room, stared at the worn-out desk, remembered helping him with science homework. She stopped in Emma's room, remembering their midnight talks about school dances and college. When she reached the door, Cole was at the top of the stairs. She looked up, eyes tired. "Take care of the kids for me." He didn't flinch. "They already know who does." She didn't cry. She just opened the door, stepped out, and left. Cole stood there a moment longer. then walked back inside and locked the door. The house was quieter now, but it wasn't the kind of silence that asked for attention. It was the sound of resolution. Cole didn't waste time after Madison left. He moved through the divorce process like someone assembling furniture, one piece at a time, no emotion, no hesitation. He met with the lawyer, filed everything on schedule, signed every form without blinking. It wasn't bitterness driving him. It was clarity. The damage had already been done. Now he was just cleaning up. Every message Madison sent after she left, Cole read, but didn't respond. Some were long, apologetic, almost poetic. Others tried to remember happy times, as if nostalgia might spark forgiveness. But none of them held what he needed, accountability without expectation. Even her remorse felt centered on her pain, not the pain she'd caused. One Wednesday, he finally packed up the rest of the house. Not his belongings, memories. He went through photo albums, school drawings, birthday cards. He boxed up everything that represented the family they once had. Not to erase it, but to store it properly, somewhere it couldn't bleed into his future. Every item went into its own place, carefully sealed. Claire, meanwhile, had started her own process. After her split with Travis, she moved into a modest apartment with her kids. It wasn't just a change of address. It was a reset. She didn't fill the space with distractions or overcorrect with optimism. She focused on stability, on rebuilding trust with her children, on not becoming bitter. She and Cole spoke more often now. Not every day, not about everything, but often enough that silence no longer felt like isolation. They met for walks, coffee, sometimes just to sit in the park and say nothing. The connection wasn't about fixing each other. It was about not having to pretend. One afternoon, during a quiet walk by the lake, Claire mentioned she'd always dreamed of visiting Maine. "I've saved photos for years," she said, almost embarrassed. "Never went. Always postponed it." Cole didn't say anything then, but 2 weeks later, he showed up at her door with 2 tickets. A few days in Maine, nothing fancy, no promises, just space. They hiked. They ate seafood at roadside diners. They sat on rocky cliffs and watched waves roll in. For the first time in months, they laughed without bitterness. They didn't talk about their exes. They didn't talk about their pain. They talked about books, movies, the future. One night, as they watched the ocean, Claire said, "I never thought I'd feel safe again." Cole replied, "I used to think safety meant keeping everything the same. Now I think it means being around people who respect your silence." When they returned, something had shifted. They didn't declare anything official. They didn't need to. Their kids noticed first. Emma started visiting more often. She'd linger in the kitchen when Claire was around, ask questions, help prep dinner. Jason took longer, but when it came time to pack for his move to college, it was Claire who stayed up organizing boxes while Cole sorted through paperwork. They didn't treat Claire like a stepmother. She didn't try to be one. She was simply present, steady, available when needed, quiet when not. One night after dinner, Jason looked at his dad and said, "You seem lighter." Cole smiled. "I'm just not carrying everything alone anymore." Madison, meanwhile, observed all of this from a distance. Occasionally, she'd see a family photo pop up on Emma's social media or hear from a mutual friend that Jason was adjusting well at school. The messages she got from the kids were short and polite. "Doing fine. Test went well. Visited Dad." They never asked about her, never invited her to anything. She called Cole one evening. He recognized the number but answered anyway. "Do you hate me?" she asked. He paused. "No, and I think that's what bothers you." She said nothing. "If I hated you, I'd still be trapped in this. But I'm not. I moved on. You haven't." Before she could respond, he ended the call with 2 words. "Take care." That night, Cole cooked dinner with Claire. One of the recipes went wrong, and they laughed about it until the smoke alarm chirped. They opened the windows, put on music, and sat out on the porch while the breeze cooled the room. There was no big speech, no dramatic kiss, just the feeling of finally being where they were supposed to be. Two people who'd been hurt, who hadn't lied to each other, and who chose to heal by building something honest. For Cole, the past hadn't vanished, but it no longer defined him. And for Madison, what remained was silence. not from others, but from herself. Because even in her most honest moments now, she couldn't deny the truth. She was the author of her own absence. Cole didn't mark the day the divorce was finalized on any calendar. He didn't mention it to anyone, didn't take a drink to celebrate or post anything online. The moment passed quietly, just like every other part of the process. He signed the final document, took a deep breath, and placed the papers in a drawer he no longer opened often. What he felt wasn't triumph. It was relief, the kind that comes when something heavy is finally set down. Madison sent another message that night, a long one, longer than usual. It was filled with reflections, apologies, attempts to explain her state of mind, how she had drifted, how she felt neglected. Cole read it carefully, line by line. Then he closed the message and never replied. It wasn't cruelty, it was a choice. He had nothing left to say to her. Everything that needed to be said had already been spoken or revealed in silence. The rest was just noise. The weeks that followed brought a new rhythm. The house was quieter, but it no longer felt tense. It felt still, clean, like a space that had finally stopped echoing with resentment. Claire came by more often, sometimes with her kids, sometimes just to share a meal or take a walk. There was still no label between them, no declaration, but everything was understood. Emma started calling her Claire with ease, like it had always been that way. Jason didn't speak much, but when Claire offered to help him get furniture for his college dorm, he didn't say no. He just showed up, accepted her presence, and didn't object when she stayed to help him assemble a bookshelf. Cole noticed it all, but didn't rush it. What was growing here wasn't a replacement. It was a new foundation, earned, respected, honest. One Sunday afternoon, Emma came over for dinner. She helped Claire cook, talked with her dad about college applications, and played music while setting the table. At one point, she turned to Claire and said, "You're good for him." Claire smiled but didn't respond. Later that evening, when the kids had gone, Cole walked Claire to her car. "You've never tried to force anything," he said. "Not with them, not with me." "I know what it's like to have someone fake a role," she replied. "I don't ever want to be that." "You're not," he said. "You're the real thing." Claire placed her hand briefly on his, then left. No promises, just trust. Meanwhile, Madison lived alone in a small apartment on the edge of town. The silence there was different. It wasn't peaceful, it was isolating. She checked her phone often, not for news but for signs of life from her kids. They rarely came. She still sent messages, birthdays, holidays, short texts. Jason rarely answered. Emma was more polite but distant. They were kind, but no longer close, and that was harder to live with than anger. Sometimes Madison saw Cole's name mentioned in conversations at the grocery store or on social media. A fundraiser for the bike group, a photo with Claire and their kids at a local event. No one said anything harsh about her. No one brought up the affair. That was over, forgotten by others, but not by her. One morning, she decided to visit the trail where Cole used to ride. She stood by the path, watching cyclists pass, wondering how many times he had pedaled past this same point, working through anger, betrayal, confusion. She imagined him here, not looking back. Later that week, she drove by their old house. She didn't stop, didn't knock. She saw the porch lights on, the sound of laughter drifting faintly from the backyard. She saw Emma helping Claire unload groceries, Jason talking with Cole near the car. And for the first time, Madison truly saw what she had lost. Not the man or the marriage, but the family, the respect, the place in their lives. She drove away without being seen. She didn't cry. She was past that now. Back at home, Cole sat on the porch with Claire. The evening air was cool and the sky had just begun to turn. They sat quietly, listening to music from the open window. "Do you ever think about how this all started?" Claire asked. "Every now and then," he said. "But I don't live there anymore." She nodded. "Neither do I." Inside the house, a timer beeped in the kitchen. Claire stood to check on dinner. Cole stayed behind for a moment longer, watching the sky. He wasn't searching for signs. He wasn't hoping for something more. What he had was enough, because it was real, and that's what made all the difference.